movies through this. So
through what? Through
Hangout.
Hangouts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do our movie night through it, and so I enable stereo mix and a variety of other stuff.
All right, so this is Book Club. I just got fucking my live stream capability taken away on my other channel because of this book club. So apparently I can't tag things related to the book, name, title, and author, or I will get a community guideline strike. But the book is Brave New World. Tell all your friends. We read the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can I download this stream later and then re-upload it on our channel?
Sure. Just be careful with your tags.
Okay.
Apparently they're a little sensitive about that.
Okay.
So yeah.
That's what we'll do. Okay.
You want to give a description of the book, Siggy?
Let me pull up Wikipedia. Hold on.
Wow. Just wow. You don't have any notes? Usually you write down notes of
Well,
things.
this is your book club, not mine anymore.
Wow. Oh wow. Shots
Yeah,
fired.
but you write down notes of things you want to talk about.
Shots
So
fired.
you don't want to talk about things?
I don't-
No, I did.
Let's say
highlight
Wikipedia didn't
some
exist. Let's say Wikipedia didn't exist. What would you say?
I would read the synopsis of.
No.
Fine. I'll do it. I'll do it.
Let's say you had nothing you could cheat from. What would you say?
Okay, why do I feel like I'm being tested? I'm doing this
Because-
outside of
Yeah,
school.
I'll do it. I got it, Siggy. I'll do it.
I'll read the
probably-
synopsis on the back.
Probably didn't read it.
So
I
this
did
is
read it. I finished it.
This book is a future in which the belief-based system, like religion and things like that, have been removed. The government's called the world state. There are places, reservations for savages or people who don't want to conform to the way in which the new society lives. Everyone is conditioned in the world state from birth. There are alphas, betas, deltas, and they basically a caste system is
Assembly
created
line.
throughout the society. Huh?
Creating assembly lines.
So there's a caste system, and you're assigned to it at birth, and so they do things to you while you're in their
Sleeping.
breeding facilities, because women no longer get pregnant. There are abortion clinics everywhere, so if you do get knocked up, you murder the baby. All children are test tube babies, and so they well, no, because they do the turning the tubes around and putting the alcohol in there and stuff like that to dumb down the lower classes, right?
Yeah, I didn't
Hear about
understand that part of what they were doing.
The science of it is not important. What's relevant is that they were controlling everybody to fit very tightly within certain intellectual tiers.
Yes,
Yeah.
I understood that, but I didn't understand the alcohol, the using alcohol.
Fetal alcohol?
Yeah, fetal alcohol syndrome.
Oh, so they were literally creating fetal
Yes.
alcohol syndrome in the lower castes?
Yes, but like controlling it like,
okay.
very, like just enough to get the right effect.
Right.
That's
They were doing
interesting.
it just to keep them a little bit smaller and a little bit dumber.
Mhm.
Right. So
Yeah.
for science.
Yeah.
So all in all,
Yeah, all the children without modification would have come out as alphas. The alphas were just unmodified.
man, was it the
Well, no, but they were
Epsilon-
still
well-
conditioned.
yeah, everybody is conditioned. Like at what is it, chapter 6, I believe it is, when I always forget her name. The main female.
Leanna or Linda?
Lenida or something like that. Yeah. Where-
Lenina.
She's talking to the other guy that she was dating. I think his name was George. And she said that she the deltas and epsilons look so happy. And they don't even they're not even envious of the alphas. And he's like, yes, well, if you had been conditioned like they had, well, just like we're not happy to be them, they're not happy to be us. It's all part of the conditioning. What is it? Everybody has their place.
Well, everybody sees their place as being the most advantageous place.
Right. Well, no, there's
Yeah.
the little rhymes. The fucking rhymes were actually hard for me to remember. I don't know why. Like my brain's conditioned to fight conditioning. I'm trying to remember. There's a little
so
rhyme
there's
that's everyone for everybody or something like that.
So there are 5 castes: alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and Appleson.
Epsilon?
And so the epsilon.
There's
Oh.
also a plus, isn't there? Or alpha plus, isn't there?
Well,
Yes.
there's a beta plus and alpha plus, yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, there you
they're all like conditioned to be less physically and intellectually superior to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a strict caste system.
Yeah.
I remember in the the comptroller in the beginning.
Oh, the one part that really stood out to me was in the beginning where they were conditioning the babies.
That's what we're talking about.
Okay.
But he was talking about how one of the things of conditioning was that people used to like the flowers and the changing of the leaves.
Yeah.
But they couldn't figure out how to commercialize it, so they had to create these expensive games to do out in the country to keep the commerce of moving back and forth up to go weekending out in the countryside, but get rid of all the annoying things like flowers and nature.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the idea was that flowers and nature became really distracting and they would stop consuming. Like they would just enjoy being in flower and nature and they wouldn't be consuming anything. So they started conditioning them to hate or dislike or create aversions to flower nature. And then the way they did it was in like one of the so in the book, they kind of suggest that it's Pavlov's conditioning methods that are being used.
Yeah. Well, you remember they have the babies with the electrified floor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to read that excerpt.
Yeah, which I guess is something that's done with the rats that Pavlov does with rats. But I thought of if in Elephants on Asses, we talked about one of the experiments with the boy Little Albert, where they tried to condition him to dislike bunnies or anything that's like furry. And so they would like physically, I don't know what he did. I don't remember what he did to condition him, but he conditioned the baby to dislike like anything that was soft or furry or anything that looked like an animal. And then he was planning on reconditioning him to start liking it. But yeah, so like this has actually been done in real life.
It says in chapter 1, we condition the masses to hate the country, concluded the director, but simultaneously we condition them to love all country sports. At the same time, we see to it that all country sports shall entail the use of elaborate apparatus, so that they consume manufactured articles as well as transport. Hence those electric shocks. Because what they're doing is they're showing them the flowers in nature, and then electrifying the floor to shock the toddlers, so that every time the concept of flower in nature comes to mind, it's associated with the pain.
Yeah.
It works.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, sure. But then the thing is like, what? So it sounds like there's kind of like a criticism of kind of consumptionism and all that happening here.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: if you control everything, what is your incentive for the consumption, right? Because it's not like the state needs the money. They own everything, right? So what is their incentive for your consumption?
Right.
And so that's an element here. So you're looking at, if you had the ability, because an underlying thing here, this is part of what we were talking about previously with Philip K. Dick. If you have this notion of what it means to be human, being something that can be engineered and twisted around, well, okay, let's say you can do that. How would you engineer people if you could? And an interesting thing with the book is how much the author is kind of a prisoner of his own society and his own notions. Like he's trying to see beyond, but he can't. And I mean, so like the book is often held to be prophetic. And it is, to the extent that like we have these capabilities, and that the human nature is programmable to a certain extent if you really grab it by the nuts. But the guy that was talking about all this stuff was very much kind of a creature of his era, and he didn't back out a little bit more and ask the question of, well, why do you need any of this? Once you have that level of control, what's the point? Right?
Yeah.
I could have you guys producing what I actually want, right? Because you guys playing your elaborate games in the country, does that serve my interests particularly? No, it took a lot of effort to make you go off and do that. And for what, for me? Right?
Well, they from what it seems that they're getting at is they want to keep the consumption up as part of the overall distraction, because they got rid of religion and philosophy, and basically being alone is frowned upon in the society. They take the drug soma, and everything is very, very superficial and commercialistic.
Right.
Right. Like the clothes, that nobody knows how to mend clothes, so when the clothes rip, they just throw them away and get brand new clothes.
Right.
And that's the focus of society.
I think it was supposed to be or either way, it's getting interpreted as a critique on capitalism, even though it's state controlled. So it's really not.
No.
Be more of a fascist system.
Well, it's not even
exactly.
fascism.
It's not. Yeah,
it's if anything, it's socialism is what it is.
Exactly. But even this thing on like the critique on consumption, I think it kind of ties into, it's not so much human need for consumption as much it is for human need to be productive and produce. And then as long as you're producing and you have purpose and you're creating and then you're consuming.
But then they wouldn't need to condition them to do that.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing that they're doing is conditioning them to consume and produce and not take leisure time.
Right.
Right. Well, the only leisure activities must be consuming activities.
But later in the book, he talks, like at the end of the book when he's talking with the savage, he's saying how we don't actually need to produce as much as we do. And how there was the experiment where they did 4-day weeks and gave them more leisure time. And it was not about giving them leisure time. It was that when they had too much time available to do leisure and consume, they started getting bored and unhappy and wanting more and started questioning things. And so it's not about consuming as much as it is about producing, as in it keeps them busy and preoccupied and gives them a sense of purpose. Because once you take that away from people, they start becoming restless and they start questioning, well, why am I here? What am I doing? So I don't know.
That's what I just said. A part of the conditioning.
But
part of the conditioning is idle hands for the devil's playground. Sure. Except there's no more devil, right? The busier they can keep them consuming and doing these superficial things,
but the less they keep them busier producing more than they do consuming. Is what I'm trying to get at.
But here's the problem with that, though: is do they need to produce something that is not of any value? I mean, you can expand your horizons. I mean,
that's why they need to consume it, because if what they're producing,
you're missing the point. The issue is, okay, if you're very poor, right? Your focus is mostly on survival, right? If you have a little bit more wealth than that, you start considering comforts, right, and making yourself comfortable. When you have wealth beyond that, you start looking at a grand mission of some kind, right? You start thinking, I'm going to colonize Mars. I'm going to some crazy, huge, expensive thing, which you can afford. Right. If you've got enough money, well, if we were a poor society, that wouldn't work, right? I mean, Somalia is not colonizing Mars. United States might be able to colonize Mars. It takes a certain amount of wealth. So if you had the wealth of the society in Brave New World, you could do something.
But for them, it's like, why bother? What's the point?
Right. It seems they're conditioned to the opposite, as though, like, when you get more money, you get more leisure time, and you're thinking that's a problem for the way the society's designed. They don't want independent thinking and aspiration.
Right. No, but I'm talking about aspirations at the top level. It's not a problem with the people at the very, very top. Right, which they could. Then they could direct everybody below them to do the thing. And then their efforts would go to that. But that's not how it works. They just blow all the energy on bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said,
Yeah, it doesn't
this
seem like a very
society's focused a
feasible
little differently,
society.
No.
Well, that's what I said. The point of the society is to basically keep everybody peaceful and happy and docile, and not
Yeah, which
critically
is why
thinking
it
about
reminds
anything.
me of Equilibrium.
Yeah, get rid of conflict. Basically, seems
Like
to be
even the whole Soma
the
thing. So
idea.
throughout, everybody takes this thing called Soma, and it's just some sort of drug that I'm guessing is like ecstasy, but without the harmful physical.
It's the perfect drug.
Yeah.
They've created the perfect
Which,
drug.
I mean, if that does get created in society, I don't know what the implications of that would be. Like if there was a drug that
Can I suggest a movie? Starpocalypse. Ever seen that?
No.
It's on YouTube for free. It's amazing.
Okay.
It involves
Maybe we can do
it
it
involves
in
instant
our movie
orgasm
club.
helmets. It involves instant orgasm helmets. Everyone wears them. And they get a little button they press in their head, and they just have an orgasm.
Yeah.
And there's some people that just sit there.
Is that
hammering on
enjoyable?
that
Isn't
button.
like the build up to it what's exciting?
What
I
I
guess
just talked
that's
about?
no, for orgasms.
I don't know. Apparently it was all people needed. They just hit that and they just go, orgasm, another orgasm, another orgasm.
That doesn't.
So you say.
Okay. Anyway, I just mean like if a drug that actually didn't have was the perfect drug, what kind of implications that would have for human behavior.
You don't think Soma was the perfect drug?
Well, no, it was, and I'm wondering how much that had to do with their ability to, because like realistically, this society doesn't make sense. First off, if this society progressed, why are the reservations like fucking caveman era? Like, shouldn't they be like what we are? Not.
Have you been to a reservation?
Well, there's.
There's no reason the reservations that we actually do have today haven't gotten better.
Yeah. Well, they're mostly.
Don't they still have iPhones? Like.
Yeah, of course they do. But the thing is that the reservation in Brave New World is not analogous to a reservation in the United States for Native Americans.
Well, no. I'm saying is like the reservations today. There's a lot of people there. They want to live separate from us. Another example would be like the Amish community. They don't want what that society has, so perhaps they see the progression.
I feel like we should invite Mycroft on here.
Because I mean, when you look around the society,
he hasn't read the book.
Oh, he hasn't. Oh, he's making it sound like he has.
He's an illiterate Greek. What do you expect?
Okay.
But when perhaps the people on the reservation look around at that society, because that's what surrounds them, and think that progression leads to that, so let's not progress. Let's hold on to the old ways.
What year was this book written again? In
very long ago.
19.
I mean,
I think it's before that.
Because I'm just wondering, like, if his idea of civilization progresses to what they have, and then the reservations is what is left behind. Like, why the reservations should have been at least what civilization was up until the point where I don't know why they would be so far back to where like modern.
Well, they could have been. Those could be more like refugee camps. Well, they're pushed out because they won't conform to society.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like the city of Los Angeles said, "Yeah, we opt out," and so then all the people who wanted this left. Remember, there was a Great War and things like that. Those were probably the losers and refused to conform to the conquerors.
But then they still would have no technology. They still should have some.
No, they do have.
Not if they were bombed into the Stone Age.
Well, they do have technology. Also, but the thing is that you're assuming that they're not being manipulated in some manner still. I mean, let's say that they started.
You're talking a government that manipulates.
Unless,
everybody.
so maybe they're pushing them to be more regressive. I guess that could make sense.
Well, let's say somebody starts like developing industry in one of the reservations. You think they're going to be okay with that?
Yeah, that could be an eventual rival. They might want to fight for independence, bring them into a war.
They just flood the whole area with soma gas, and everybody just falls asleep with a smile on their face and dies of exposure.
Plus, they could probably mass produce people more than the natural breeding on the reservation.
Oh yeah.
So it's not.
Yeah.
It's not like
No,
that's
I mean,
going to be a winnable thing for the people on the res.
one of the themes is the notion of the manufactured man.
Yeah.
Right. They're making people, and they're not just making people. They're making souls. Right. They're making the whole package, all of it.
Yeah.
Right. And so all the castes, they're products. Each one of them is a manufactured factory person that was made to order.
But like,
Right.
for what purpose? For just keeping them happy and proving,
Mhm.
I don't know, just for the sake of creating the society? Like, that's what seems the whole purpose of the society is just so that it...
Well, it's a critique of a variety of things. So it's a critique of utilitarianism, for one thing. So are you familiar with the philosophical concept of utilitarianism?
No.
Okay, so that's the whole notion that the greatest good is obtained by having the least suffering or the most happiness in the world,
Right. Yeah.
right, over
Yeah.
the aggregate population, right? Now, you can see how from a utilitarian standpoint, the world of Brave New World would actually make a very good argument for itself.
It doesn't seem that bad.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
Well, I mean, not for the people who are in it, though, and I think that's the point.
No, because you're not even human. Okay, what you are happy. It's a devil's bargain here. You've traded your soul for bliss.
Yeah, and you have to remember that they electrocute toddlers to not like flowers. Imagine.
I know.
Just think of where that goes from there.
Okay, so I'm gonna appear in front of you in a column of smoke. Okay, there's a little sulfur in the air. Look in my goat-slitted eyes. All right. I'm gonna offer you infinite bliss forever, and all I want is your soul. Probably not doing anything with it anyway.
I'm sure there's lots of people who would consider that.
I know, exactly. What do you think keeps the fires of hell burning here, my dear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should maybe like go through kind of quickly the plot of the story, though.
Okay.
I was actually going to read another excerpt, but if you want to do the plot, go ahead.
Well, just to quickly, so we've kind of given an idea that there is this society, and we've described the society, but pretty much there's this one guy. His name is Bernard, and
it's called the World State.
Yeah, the World State. And there's this one guy. His name is Bernard, and he feels like he doesn't fit in, and like starts questioning things. He actually reminded me at first of similar character as the one in Fahrenheit 451. Where he just starts like questioning, and I don't know. And he has this other friend who also does the same thing. Anyways, they get these planned vacation, and he goes with this chick to these reservations. Sorry. And then it goes to the reservation, and then they meet this character called the Savage, which is his mother who had been left in the reservation like years and years ago, and she had been pregnant at the time. And so she ends up getting stuck there and having this baby, and this baby's named John, and he really likes to read, and he reads lots of Shakespeare. And so they end up coming back to the new world, or the world state, with Bernard and the chick. And then it's the rest of the book is pretty much the Savage trying to cope with these two worlds of kind of what he experienced in the reservation and not fitting there, but then coming to the world state and then seeing how like detached and no meaningless it is, I guess, for lack of a better term. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
I think Fred should join us. Yeah.
So, are you still in Discord? You can send him the invite, the hangout. So, going back to the beginning, when the director is talking to the school children, showing them how they condition children. So that's a charming little group. He pointed. He said, pointing. In a little grassy bay between tall clumps of Mediterranean heather, Two children, a little boy of about 7 and a little girl who might have been a year older, were playing very gravely and with all the focused attention of scientists intent on a labor of discovery, a rudimentary sexual game. Charming, charming, the DHC repeated sentimentally. Charming, the boys politely agreed. But their smile was rather patronizing. They had put aside similar childish amusements too recently to be able to watch them now without a touch of contempt. Charming? But it was just a pair of kids fooling about, that was all. Just kids. So I was reading that because the entire society's conditioned approach to sex, it goes on and talks about one of the little boys not being
Comfortable.
into the sex games that they have the little kids play, and they said that he might need more conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the entire book, there's like later on, Lenita gets criticized by her sister roommate about how she's only been with one man over the last couple months when she should have been with at least 60.
Yeah.
And so the entire society also conditions them away from monogamy and getting close personal bonds with each other.
Because they're all distractions. But I mean, but not distractions. Sorry. They can all lead to emotions and unhappiness and discontent. Like if you care about someone.
Well, yeah, also
negative feelings could occur. Like negative feelings are just it's really interesting though, because if you contrast this with equilibrium, this is like equilibrium is no feelings, like no negative or positive. Everyone's just neutral and numb all the time, where this is just like overdosing people with positivity and good feelings all the time.
Right. Yeah. Go on.
Mm-hmm.
No, I just think it's like interesting the contrast between the two.
Yeah.
And which one works better.
But again, all right, so do you understand the sort of the philosophical milieu that this book came out of? Right? Like the people that he was talking to, sort of the discussions that were happening in sort of English high society that this guy was particularly being exposed to. It was all this sort of utilitarian stuff. It was this notion of how do we go forward logically, empirically, after the death of God, right? It's that whole, because everyone had sort of an understanding of what they were kind of going for in previous cultural epochs. But then the notion is, okay, so all these things have been revealed to be wrong. How do we create something that's less wrong? And so they're trying to come up with these empirical mathematical systems of arriving at morality and at an equitable society. And so Brave New World, to a large extent, is a criticism of their calculations. It's a criticism of utilitarianism. This notion that you create, that the best society is a society where everybody is happy. He created a society where everybody is very happy and the society is monstrous, and which demonstrates that happiness is desirable, but it actually isn't what we're after here. We're not after happiness. It's just another illusion. And that's part of one of the things that Brave New World is trying to get at. You've got the alphas understand to some extent, because they're the only people who haven't been brain damaged. They understand that the happiness is ephemeral and meaningless, and it has this sort of soulless quality to it that is empty, and it's why the alphas are kind of moody, right? They because they're actually not satisfied, not entirely,
and yet they still maintain the society.
Sure.
And
well,
it's the collectivism of the society.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking out as like the whole reason Bernard is shunned and Helmholtz are shunned, right? They're both considered eccentric personalities, but Helmholtz has much better time in the society because his issue is in the mind, where Bernard has more of a physical ailment.
Well,
right?
Bernard's an interesting character because he starts out as this kind of like oh, like he feels he starts questioning things and he doesn't fit in, and that's what leads him to question things. But as soon as he starts getting attention and appraisal from people and being like, so his issue wasn't really like questioning the society, it was not being popular,
not fitting in.
Not being, and as
basically
soon as,
he's vain and self-absorbed, just like the rest of them.
And as soon as he became popular, he, all of those original problems that he had with the society went out the door. He completely embraces all of them and talks about how he even has this line where he says that his problem was that he didn't partake in the privileges of what the society had to offer and stuff. And then as soon as the savage, who's become, I guess, like this spectacle in the world state, as soon as he stops like being interesting to people, and that's the source of what Bernard's popularity is coming from, being associated with the savage, he goes exactly back to the same character he was in the beginning of the book. So yeah.
Well, if you remember, he was about to be exiled for not fitting in, Bernard.
Yeah.
Until he brought back the savage, and remember that's the savage.
Yeah, and
Bernard's
the way that
boss's son, and the mother is his girlfriend that he took there on holiday some 20 years ago. And the whole reason he was going to kick him out was because he kind of opened up a little bit that he felt some emotion for that girl and missed her and was sad that she was lost, right? Like, so in his mind, he was like, I'm going to get rid of Bernard because he's a little eccentric, so I can get away with it. And I'm going to fucking banish him to, what was it, Iceland? Basically to protect himself, because as we were saying, the Alpha Pluses all have their discontent with society, but they're forced to conform. So when he opened himself up a little bit to Bernard, now he was going to exile him for it. But Bernard brought back his savage son, and it ended up exiling the director, right? And just like that, Helmholtz was exiled, right? So if they did speak out, right, about their issues, they run the risk of being exiled or reconditioned.
Yeah, but then you find out at the end of the book that being exiled is not so bad, because they end up just going.
They don't know that.
Yeah, that's
if
true.
If you're not living in that society, you don't know it's
you
not
don't
so
wait.
bad.
No, well, you don't know that in the first book. There are there's another one, and I think there's a third one as well. This is only about this one book, so I don't know if it's appropriate for me to talk about subsequent titles, but the it's outside of it. They have their own discontent. They live in the shadow of this society, and they have whatever they have on their own, but they look at that thing, and it just sort of is this colossus that distorts everyone's notion of right and wrong and meaning and so on. It's just there, and it causes problems. It's hard to ignore it and forge your own path in the presence of that on your planet. So.
And I'd imagine if the exiled people got together and started actually building a worthwhile society, that the dominant society that seems to rule the entire planet with, 2 billion people, probably wouldn't allow that to happen either. Same thing, like we were talking about the reservations. Would probably allow them to exist, but they probably keep a close eye on them.
Well, they don't actually need to. Part of the problem for these societies of the exiles is they're all kind of eccentric, neurotic people in the first place.
Right.
And to make a rival civilization, they're not going to be making the tube babies. They're going to have to actually bump ugly.
And they're sterilized.
Well,
aren't they?
I think a lot of them are, yeah. And also, I didn't see any women in any of that. It seemed like
probably sent them somewhere different.
Possibly, but it seemed like it was mostly dudes. I mean, how many alpha females did you run into?
Yeah, that's it.
I can't think of any.
Cacao.
I'm trying to think, because Lenina is a beta, isn't she? A beta plus?
Isn't Bernard also a beta?
No, he's an alpha plus.
He's an alpha, but he's like a weird alpha.
No, he's
considered because Leanna and Fanny talk about how he's like
all the alphas.
Different.
But all the alphas are a little weird, and the alpha pluses are basically they're the least controlled people in society in their own way, because they're not genetically or they're not screwed with in the test tube so much. They might be conditioned thereafter, but it's harder to mess with them because they're smart enough that they can unwire their own conditioning just by sitting there and thinking for a minute. If they want to.
What's interesting though, it's also like this world, this world is supposed to be like everyone is happy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah,
but then
that's the dystopia part.
Right. But then but in fact but like the things that actually bring real happiness and meaning to human life are eliminated. So things like love and passion and like, being proud of your child and family, like all of those things that give people actual happiness and like material happiness is not long lasting. It's artificial.
They bring misery too. They also bring misery. That's why they got rid of them.
Right.
So they only want safe happiness.
But they can never actually create real happiness though, because it's all very materialistic, arbitrary, temporary happiness. It's not like long lasting.
That's the whole point of it being a dystopia, is that it doesn't actually make them
happiness.
happy.
It just gets in the way of their perfect utopia.
Right.
Yeah.
So as a society, none of like the alpha plus people are actually happy, but they keep the society going because that's society.
The people are engineered to be cogs in the machine to do what they're told to do. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Right.
So the point of Brave New World is not to show you a good society. The idea is to criticize, I think, a lot of these sort of philosophical moral constructs that were prevalent in the early 20th century that were being thrown around as far as how to structure society and what was moral and what was right and so on. And people were trying to come up with basically scientific morality, right? Like statistical morality. And this is something that people are still enamored with today. You see that like people are always coming at you with their fucking statistics.
Ethics,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is that they don't look at the methodology. They don't, it's why the buzz insult of our current era is autism, right? We cite people as being autistic, not because we think that they are on the spectrum, but because they're being myopic, right? They're looking at things from a very specific perspective that is limiting. And they are adding their little numbers up. And based on the numbers they added up, it arrives at good and evil. And it's like, well, it's more complicated than that. But they don't want to see that. And so you say autism. Because that's what
that
is going on.
That actually makes lots of sense. I didn't know that was the root.
Oh, of course it is. It's just myopic behavior. And it's why statistical arguments.
Well, I think it's also like cognitive dissonance.
Sure, but it's these very self-fulfilling sort of logical structures that people set up where you desire a certain outcome, and so you engineer some sort of logical system that ultimately arrives at that position, and you get your little numbers together, and you've got your Excel spreadsheet, and you can see, oh well, the happiness quotient is up 5% today.
Yeah.
What the fuck does that mean? What is a happiness quotient?
Well, think about Mustafa Mond, right? Like that is his job. He's the resident world controller of Western Europe.
Yeah,
right?
I love that it's just like straight up resident world controller. Like,
yeah. Well, he's his whole thing. Like, I don't remember the details, but he was reading the paper, and then he marks it out and says that it can't be published because he's like, oh, it's a good paper, good ideas, but it's like scientific freedom, which is not allowed in the society because it threatens the societal happiness.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is but that's what I was getting at with the happiness is that it's like it's a paradox of the society in they're trying to the goodness they're morally virtue signaling by saying that everybody is so happy, but in fact, nobody is really happy and the happiness is fake. It's arbitrary. It's manufactured.
What?
And so it's like a paradox of like the society that they take away the things that actually bring happiness.
The social stability, right? That's what they're basically calling the social happiness, is that, you know, they've pretty much done away with war, and most like real conflicts and high crime and things like that are not really concerns
which
anymore.
I guess the only way to create the most amount of happiness for the most amount of people, I guess, is
Have you ever heard of Pax Romana?
No.
The Roman peace. Okay, it was what was referred to as what would happen to territory after it was conquered by the Romans. Is that you had all these areas with tribes and whatever that were warring with one another for time out of mind. The Romans would march over with their legions.
Oh yeah,
and then the Pax Romana would descend over the land, the Roman peace. Now, was that peace? Well, there was no war.
Maelstrom. That's what the Romans called the Mediterranean. Literally means our sea. Mm-hmm. The Mediterranean Sea was completely under the control of the Roman Empire, and for what it's worth, trade was more or less unmolested. Whenever pirates showed up, the Romans killed them all.
Sure, but it was Roman trade.
Yep.
And this is what you run into with, say, Islam as well, right? Islam is the religion of peace, right? But Islam also means submission, right? Submit.
Yeah.
It's about domination. And so peace is obtained through domination. I dominate you, and then there's peace. And I now control your mind, and there is no discontent.
Sure.
There you go. But you can see the shenanigans with the statistics. Take this the drive, the no child left behind, right? This whole notion of I think it's actually a pretty good example of, as far as manufacturing people, and it's also a good example of sort of statistical arguments that lead to this sort of myopic thinking, where the problem that they're having is they've got certain educational statistics that are suboptimal, and they want to improve that. And so the easiest way to improve that is to fiddle the statistics. It's not to actually teach the kids how to read. That's difficult. But what if I make the statistics look good? Well, look at what a wonderful job I've done. And and if I give everybody a really garbage education, well, we're all equal, right? The quality is a good thing, right? Yep. Everyone gets crap.
Equality over quality.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And our stats are just through the roof that I keep manipulating all the time. You can see this with a million different government statistics, and you run into this all the time. I mean, open a newspaper any day. It is full of these arguments, and it's just endless numbers that are designed to disguise what's actually going on. They've got a narrative they're pushing. It's the narrative is basically give me more money and power, good. And consequence is that these numbers improve. So you should keep doing that. Never mind that the numbers don't mean anything. Just like in Brave New World, the happiness quotient, or whatever you want to call it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's bullshit.
And I did find 30% of the world's women are not sterilized. So 70% are, basically.
Okay, do they live forever? I never understood that. So their use is...
Don't you remember they were in the taxicopter or whatever the fuck it was called?
Cremation chambers.
And Bernard asked Hemshold about Lenin asked, what's his name? Asked somebody about the collection of phosphorus for power from the dead bodies at the crematorium.
Okay, but if you don't age and you're kept at youth... because they keep talking about how in the Savage, how they've
killed.
How after how many years?
Well, let's say you live longer. You probably live longer in this society than you do out in the wild. Okay.
Because they say they've eliminated fear of death, And that one of the things about the reservations was that people
they
were so
conditioned you
aging.
not to worry about death. Not that they got rid of death. They condition you to think death is good.
Or just not think about it.
Yeah, or not bad, I should say.
Okay, so like,
it's just
what's the
another
average
step in life.
lifespan in this world, and how do they not age
Don't worry about it.
die anyway?
Don't worry about it.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Oh,
Don't worry about
right.
it.
Either
Don't worry about it.
they found a way to reduce the immediate physical appearance of the aging, or no one lives long enough to care about the aging.
Here's the thing. So, have you ever seen the famous 1960s movie Logan's Run? Ever seen that movie? No.
No.
In Logan's Run, everybody is affixed with this little jewel in the palm of their hand, and everyone lives in this glorious kind of utopia, right? It's full of monorails and gardens and orgies all the time, and there's no want and whatever.
Yeah.
At the age of 35, the gem in your hand will start pulsing red, and when that happens, you basically have to go to a ritual where you will be killed. And it's it's an honor to do it. It is it's something that everybody wants to do. It is just the way that things work, and only a degenerate would not go there when the jewel pulses.
You're hunted if you don't.
Well, yeah, because it's a violation against the whole order of the state. And so there are no old people in Logan's Run. They at 35, they all show up to be terminated.
I think it was 30, but yeah,
It might have been whatever it was.
keep them all young, but
Yeah, as soon as the
whole narrative
start to
keeps
sag,
society-
you gotta go. You gotta go.
so it's just part of population control.
Okay, so like,
So you're
it's
reproduced. So like they reproduce you. So there'll be like a new baby that has your name, and then they'll implant the chip in there. Well, within like the last 5 years of your death or something like that. So a new one of you is produced, and it's societal control, right? So same kind of concept, except they actually make it a ceremony to kill you in Logan's Run. Unlike Brave New World, it's just, oh well, you're dead. Here's the crematorium.
Okay, but so like, it's a thing in the book to not let you know how old anybody is and how long they live for.
Well, they all look the same. They have the aging drugs that stop them. Remember, because Linda in the reservation, without that, how
Yeah.
she became old, and the haunches
Ugly,
and everything,
yeah.
wrinkly, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in society, they don't do that, but eventually, either you expire or they kill you.
I think what the drug does is it stops you from looking old.
Yeah, that's what my suspicion was.
Yeah, I don't think it causes you to not get old. You just don't, like, it makes your skin and so on look youthful until just one day you die of organ failure.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Or they just keep track of you, and when you start to die, they whisk you away so that no one knows
yeah.
what happens or whatever.
Well, and
I
here's
guess-
the other thing.
and-
is
and
you
I
could
guess-
remove large portions of the population and no one would care, right? Like, so you could have hospital, like, gurneys showing up to people's cubicles or whatever on a regular basis to whisk people off to the fires. And who's
No one
going
would
to,
know. Yeah.
well, who cares?
Well, you
There's
remember
no-
when the mom died, right?
And there's no like medication or medicine or fixing people, because the whole what is it, mending is waste, like something about like you don't reuse, or when something breaks you buy a new one, you don't, and that means people too,
Why
like,
not?
because I
It's
don't
planned
recall.
obsolescence.
Yeah, I don't
Built
recall like a
into people.
concept, although they are in a hospital, but the hospital is like where the babies are.
No, the
No,
mom
it's a
Created.
dies.
factory.
Don't you remember the
It's a
mom
factory.
dies?
Yeah, I guess.
Right?
Yeah,
And
they
the
have
nurse,
like
the nurse is confused by by John's, feelings about his mom dying.
sadness. Yeah,
Because in this society, people just die. They're just,
I guess the
here's the
hospital
place
is
where you
people
die. We'll wait, and then we're gonna burn you.
Mhm.
So
Right.
if you get sick, like, you don't get medication to get better. You just
No one seems
you
to get
just
sick. They
die.
they get old and die, right? But you're kept looking young.
How can they stop cancer? Like, how can they stop
let's-
yourself
well,
from
let's-
mutating?
Well, let's say they've got a very high command of medical science, which lets them keep people relatively happy and comfortable. Soma, for example, makes it very clear, as well as the baby factories, that they do have to have a pretty high command of medical science. So they probably can cure your cancer right there.
I mean, for Christ's sake, they date. I can't remember if it's his death or his birth, but they date the years by, I believe, Ford. It's at least 600 years, I guess, after Ford.
It's the 26th century.
Yeah, it's
And
like 600 years after
do
Ford.
they mean like
Ford
literally
died.
like the Ford or like Henry Ford?
Yes.
Yep, literally.
Aldous Huxley had an obsession
So,
with
so what is the significance of
Obvious.
Ford? Just the Industrial Revolution? Just
mass production.
No, the assembly line.
That too, yeah, especially
That
that.
was Ford
Okay.
is often cited. What someone will disagree, whatever, but he's often cited as being the guy who popularized the use of the assembly line in modern industry.
It's the moving assembly line, you bigot. There's your disagreement.
There you go. Yeah, because conveyor belt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's genius idea. And you can have a Model T in any color you want, so long as it's black.
Yep.
It dries faster.
Yep.
All right. Well, but that's kind of the entire theme behind Brave New World, right? Like everything is reduced down to being industrialized, assembly line, right? Even to death, where you're cremated and then they gather the phosphorus for fuel, right? Like that's the entire purpose of the entire society is a factory.
Right. And it's interesting sort of listening to kind of the philosophical gestalt of the time, which is what this book is a product of. And a lot of times people are not aware of what's going on in our own society, right? So like today, what everyone's talking about is the singularity and transhumanism and all that kind of stuff. In their day, what they were interested in was how does the assembly line and interchangeable parts and all that interact with the human soul, right? And that's ultimately what a lot of this works into, blending these sort of industrial economic concepts into morality, into God. And the thing is you can see the exact same thing is happening today. It's just that today it's artificial intelligence and algorithms and cybernetic this or that, and the transference of the human essence into some sort of an artificial construct, right? And the notion that this is a sublimation, this takes you to a higher plane of existence or something, which is literally what the transhumanists are on about.
Yeah.
Don't also forget that, or at least with the eugenics in the book, this is with the alphas and betas and omegas and epsilons, whatever, people being designed for perfect roles for what they see, what the governing role sees as fit. This book was written at the same time the Nazis are going out to Central Asia measuring people's skulls to find the Aryan race.
Right.
All this happening at the same time. Then you've got the progressive movements, which have like the
best,
cult of
aren't
the
they?
technology, the way of the future, all the world's fairs.
All the
Everything
eugenics.
can be solved. That's what this is all coming out of. All of it.
Yep.
Social Darwinism, everything.
Yep. And so much of it, again, is this whole utilitarian concept and this notion of manufacturing the perfect society, by one of these sort of centralized plans. You lay out a society like a blueprint, and the gentlemen show up with their pocket protectors and their rulers and their compasses, and they create heaven.
Yeah.
What year was
Well,
this
I
book
think-
published?
The 30s.
30-something?
Yeah.
Early 30s.
Well, he comes back to it a few times, right? So he has like one version of the book, and then he writes some other stuff, and then he kind of comes back to this book. I think I wonder because he still creates this caste system, and the whatever the epi guys are, do like the manufacturing work. So I just wonder like in our world with robots, a lot of the work that they created or the lower caste levels for could be done robotically.
Well, again, the point is this is all an allegory for a philosophical argument. It's not supposed to be a thing that exists. The
Yeah.
entire thing is a metaphor.
Well, let's look at it
Or an
more
analogy. I don't know, I
literal.
get those confused.
I think that yes, they would have the technology, right? I mean, the progression. It's not like factory work didn't exist. If he was obsessed with Henry Ford, he kind of got the concept of it, at least some form of mechanical production,
Yeah.
right? It progresses, but keeping the epsilons around, like Bernard, he's got disdain for them because he's smaller than the rest of the alpha pluses. And so he feels that everyone compares him to them in physical stature because they're bigger than he is, right? And so like he has disdain for him, and it's like that's kind of if you're an alpha plus, but there's only alpha pluses. What good is being an alpha
But I
plus?
guess,
You
yeah,
need the
and
epsilons.
why mass produce robots when you can mass produce people and just have them?
Well, I'm
Although,
saying
no.
the psychological aspect of being superior.
Well, no, but
Right?
the point is not to be industrially competent. The point is to show the horror of a utilitarian society. The point of Brave New World is
Which
here's a
is
society.
you need to know that you're better than somebody else for the society to work.
The point is that everyone being happy doesn't make a society good.
Yeah. Because the epsilons are happy and they're completely content and they don't want to be any other class. But the alphas look at them like, oh, the poor dirty people. I'm so happy I'm not them.
Yeah,
Right? They have a higher
brainwash them
brain
to think
function.
that.
And
So
the
if it were
betas,
just robot, then who would they have to look down on?
But then at
Well-
the same time, they say everybody belongs to everybody and
Yeah.
everybody serves a purpose, and all the other communist
still
shit that they say in the
refers
book.
throughout the book that they find themselves feeling superior to the other classes. Right? Throughout the entire book, there's constant mention degradingly of other classes. From
It's
the
implied
alphas.
all the classes
Yeah.
degrade and think low of one another.
Yeah.
They don't want to be each other. The
Yep,
epsilon doesn't want to be an alpha. The alpha doesn't want to be an epsilon.
Yep.
Which means what? Tribalism still needs to exist for a utilitarian society to exist.
They're all conditioned to see their role as being the most desirable.
Yeah.
It makes them more
Yeah.
efficient at performing their role. If they think that they are the best suited for their role, they will fulfill their role.
You don't aspire.
Yeah.
It's one big circular factory where everyone thinks they're the most important one to produce in a big circle.
Yep.
And that's what gives you societal happiness.
Well, and you can see this comes out of England, right? So I don't know if you guys are familiar with English class politics.
I'll be right back.
Vaguely.
But there's quite a lot of that in English class politics. You'll have people who call themselves working class, right, in England. And they see that as being the most noble and correct and virtuous class, right?
Right.
And then you've got the people that see themselves as middle class. Now, middle class in England historically does not mean the same thing as middle class in the United States. Middle class in America is pretty much anyone not poor and not with their own island.
Right.
But in England, it has a cultural context to it. And they likewise feel that their position is the most correct, the most modern and noble and whatever. And they look down on the working class people. And then you've got sort of the aristocracy who are, largely, the sons of Lord whomever, right? And it's still a thing in England, these guys. They still have their estates and their fucking polo ponies and stuff. And they also look down or see their own thing as being the best. And I mean, I may be missing one here or more, I don't know, but there's at least those three, and they all work that way. And so what they're really doing in Brave New World is they're taking, because again, Huxley is English. It's taking English class structure and standardizing it the way that you standardize bolts and rivets, for an industrial line. Everything you get out the calipers and you make sure it falls into the correct standards. This is, the correct person.
Yeah, this is how this person should be for this class.
Mm-hmm.
And then mass produce.
Yep.
Doesn't this sound lovely?
Well, right, but what it's getting at is the fallacy of this notion of utilitarianism, right? Wherein you back out and you ignore the humanity of people, because that's a core element of utilitarianism, is ignoring people's humanity. There's no interest in the individual in utilitarian philosophy and thinking. That's not how it operates. It's trying to aggregate everything to statistics. And so that's really what all these people are. They're all statistics. And by the metrics in their analytics, all the numbers are excellent. And that's what it's all about. It's just turning everybody into numbers and then manufacturing happy.
Yeah. Mass produce everything.
See? And Siggy fucked off.
I'm here.
Oh.
My coffee got cold. I'm really cold for some reason.
You're in Canada.
Yeah.
And it's November.
The entire country is cold. We've seen you, Canada, huddling up along the border. It's disgusting. It's disgusting.
And Ottawa is even colder than Toronto, so I'm still acclimatizing.
Mm-hmm.
And we live in a house instead of an apartment, which is also colder. So all sorts of coldness.
Don't you just have like a little space heater? Just get a space heater. What is wrong with you?
Those drain a lot of electricity, and electricity is expensive here.
Jesus Christ.
I would like the Feelies, though. That didn't seem so bad.
No.
The Feelies sound amazing.
Did you like the kids molesting each other at the young age too?
No.
Do you know what the Feelies are?
Feelies.
The movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's wrong? People, there might have been an orgy after.
Yeah, there'd be an orgy after the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, but that's not the Feelies. That's an orgy after the Feelies.
Yes.
The Feelies it has sight, sound. You get a physical sensation and smells, and it's a completely immersive movie experience.
Oh.
You fucking weirdo.
Yeah, of course it's all done to basically guarantee that you'll like it, and it does that by playing on your kind of base sensory inputs. So rather than there being like a narrative or an argument being made or any kind of literature or any of the things that we see as being the uplifting elements of art, the Feelies had none of it. It was a visceral sensory experience, basically designed to make you come really, really hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I think all the good stuff in the book came out in the last conversation in the end between the Savage and what's his face? The resident controller. No.
Oh,
Yeah.
Go on.
And I don't know. I have some quotes, but I don't know if you want to go there.
Oh my God! Just
go.
Say your thing.
Okay, so I really liked it. It was just kind of funny because the Savage keeps trying to talk about, but what about this and what about that, and the controller keeps knocking him down at every stage, right? And so he keeps asking him about what about self-denial, what about God, what about being alone? And he's like, well, nobody's ever alone here. We make sure they're never alone. And then he goes, what about God? And he's like, we don't there's no need for God. There's no purpose for him. And then he has the one thing, what about heroes, civilizations, and, people and nobility and all of these things? Cause he's been reading all of this Shakespeare. Right. And, his quote, he goes, my dear young friend, said Mustafa Mode. Civilization has absolutely no need for nobility or heroism. These things are symptoms of political inefficiency. In a properly organized society like ours, nobody has opportunity for being noble or heroic. Conditions have gone through unstable before the occasion can arise, where there are divided allegiances, where there are temptations to be resisted, objects of love to be fought for, defended. There's obviously nobility and heroism to have some sense, but there aren't any wars nowadays. The greatest care is taken to prevent you from loving anyone too much. There is no such thing as a divided allegiance. You are conditioned that you can't help what you're doing. You're conditioned to help that you can't help doing what you ought to do. I thought that was actually really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, right. And do you want to live in a world where, I mean, this is
no war. There is no, like, a peaceful world.
Well, no, you're an infinite child. Think about it like that. So let's say you're the child in your parents' house and you are shielded from the problems of the outside world. You never have to worry about the IRS. You never have to worry about war. You never have to worry about being cold or hungry. You're just in this like little box, and then you're left in your room with toys and amusements, and you giggle until you die of old age. Right? As a 60-year-old toddler, right? You're just sitting there playing with your blocks as your beard grows white, right? And that is the other thing there. And so, were you ever even really a human being? Did it ever really happen? You were always you were a pet.
Yeah, and I think that's what like the Savage's character is trying to get at. Like, what are about all of the things? Like, suffering is what makes you human. He goes like, what about tears? What about, like, he literally like keeps asking about like with pain and suffering, and then he gets mad at the end. And I think this is where it's funny and it ties into SJW kind of mentality, because he's like, because he goes, he tells a story. He's like, back in the Savage tells a story about back in the day, the story that goes on in the reservations about how to get a girl, where they had to like fight mosquitoes and flies and magic flies to get the girl. And whoever could stand the biting and the stinging, they're the ones who got the girl. And the controller's like, yeah, but like, we've gotten rid of all of those stuff. You don't have to fight for the girl. You can just easily get the girl. And you can get whatever you want whenever you want it. And he gets mad and he's like, that's just like you. Get rid of them. Yes, get rid of everything unpleasant instead of learning to put up with it. Mm-hmm. And I thought like that kind of perfectly tied into SJW mentality.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, to get political here, the modern SJW movement is an outgrowth, ultimately, of this philosophical position that Huxley was arguing against, and something which a lot of people get, put on your tinfoil hat here for a moment, is a lot of this links into the Fabian Society, and which has links to Huxley's brother, was a member of the Fabian Society. I mean, where do you think he was hearing this shit from in the first place? A
society where everyone has sex with everyone.
The ultra utilitarian, every manufacturer happy, generate, this manufactured society. The empirical good, right? All of that was coming out. Making everybody equal, forcing it, right? That was something that was happening in the cocktail parties in his social circle. People were talking about this stuff. And again, his brother is one of the founding members of the Fabian Society, which is why Loki, I think, was interested in Brave New World. Loki knows about this. You can ask him about it if you want. Anyone who talks about the Fabian Society immediately sounds insane. There's no way out of it, apparently. But if you just look it up, it's...
They're on Twitter. They got a Twitter account. They got
a Twitter account. Yeah, and it's the same organization from back in the day. And they're founding members of the British Labour Party. And they have contacts all over Europe. They're incredibly influential. And their philosophical precepts are evident in modern political discourse. And they are ultimately behind the SJWs. The whole thing with Antifa and whatever, that is a child of this. And you can see that if you...
so George Soros is part of this society, probably?
Yeah, actually, it's very easy to connect them. By association. Those are the circles he was educated within, literally.
If I'm looking at the same brother, Julian Huxley was also part of the British Eugenics Society. So
good guys.
Exactly. So this is what Huxley was talking about. He was making a criticism of things that people were talking about in his time.
But is he making a criticism of like equality of outcome? Because even here, there's different caste systems, so it's not equality. There is still a class difference.
But they're all happy where they are. So you can't make everybody exactly equal in society. But if you could make them content with their lot in life and happy to be where they are and not where they are, well, that's the whole point. The SJWs are the ones whinging and crying about it. They're not the ones who are going to enact it.
No, okay, so they absolutely do make utilitarian arguments, though. So, for example, let's say there's a guy who's really happy, and then there's like 10 people that are not happy, right? SJWs will frequently argue that if we dick over that one guy who's happy and take all his shit away and give it to everybody else, that we have created a more equitable society.
Yeah.
Right?
Now everyone's equally.
Well... Or the other people
I guess communism is like equality through equal misery.
Well, no, but even let's say even if you did make everybody slightly happier by dicking over the other guy, the argument that they would make was that it was morally justified because if I quantify the amount of happiness, right, they will make this argument, this notion of quantifying happiness. That I have made this person quantifiably less unhappy than I have made these other people happy, and therefore there is a net increase in happiness, right? That's a kind of argument they still make, right?
Right.
You can see that.
I think so. Here's what I think what the SJWs want and what the Fabian Society people would want. It's the SJWs think that they would get equality. But they're being manipulated by those people to really create what would be more similar to what would be in Brave New World, where you would have, and then they would be the alphas running everything, and then the rest of us would be. But the SJWs wouldn't know that because they don't.
Right. So whenever you're
definitely
whenever you're listening to an alpha plus in Brave New World, understand that a lot of these people, the kind of tricky dodges that they have for their moral improprieties and ethical lapses, that's more or less what Huxley was running into in these cocktail parties. There would be some monstrous thing that was suggested, and then there would be one of these little dodges that people would make, right? And you can see that basically that is exactly the idea. You're talking about class structure. The people that were advocating this nonsense in London in the 30s or in the 1920s or whenever Huxley was absorbing this, they all saw themselves as being alphas in the new order, right? And you run into this all the time with people, say, that are advocating communism or whatever today, right? They don't see themselves as being another fucking potato farmer, right? They're going to be
one of the people
member of the Communist Party. They're gonna do something with that. And you see the same thing with people that have these romantic notions of what feudalism was like, and the whole peasant noble relationship. And the whole idea with that is like, well, I wouldn't I wouldn't be a dirty, wheat farmer. I would be something else. It's like, well, guess what? 98% of the population was wheat farmers, buddy. So what do you think the possibility is of going to be anything else?
Roll a 100-side die. Tell me what you get.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's something called the central tendency bias or something for everybody think that they're above average or above the norm. So whenever so an example would be like reading this book and assuming that if you were in this world, you would have been an alpha.
Well, we would all be alphas.
Yeah, or it's like even when Peterson
because we weren't brain damaged at birth.
Yeah. Well, even Peterson talks about like when people think about World War II, they never assume that they could have been the Nazi.
Right.
Even though likelihood is that like you would have been the Nazi and you would have done the same horrible shit.
I would have been in a concentration camp, so I know exactly where I would have been. And it's not better than being a Nazi. I'll say that.
One of my grandfathers, who was a very smart guy, ultimately the army handed him a bazooka.
Yeah.
That was what his job was, and he was happy enough to do it. And he was in the Battle of the Bulge and the whole thing. But you look at his test scores or whatever, and you'd be like, "Oh, this guy's just really smart." But you know what? Guess what? We don't need another brain. What we need is another guy to shovel a bazooka. Okay, so I'm just going to slap you on your little clever head here, okay, and pat you on the ass, and you get the fuck out there and kill some Nazis, because that's what you need. Unless you can kill them with your mind. Do you have mind bullets? No. Okay, here's a bazooka. Shut up.
Yeah.
If you want to tie into the Fabian Society,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Because if you wanted to tie into the Fabian Society, I knew that he would name characters in the story after, or at least sometimes vaguely, sometimes not so vaguely after people in real life. I mean, Bernard Marx is the most obvious example of not only Karl Marx but.
Oh, I thought
so what's that?
Mustafa Mond.
Or that, but going on Bernard, a more obvious one that a person that he would have been in the same circles with probably was George Bernard Shaw, who was himself part of the Fabian Society.
Really?
A eugenicist.
See, this is why everyone sounds crazy when they talk about the Fabian Society, because it connects to everything. And it very quickly gets absolutely fucking banana pants. If I started explaining this to you, you would immediately assume I would. No, you don't. You'd say, you'd like, this guy's been sucking Alex Jones's cock, is what you're going to start thinking.
No, I think Alex Jones is the most sane human being on the planet. And the rest of us are crazy.
You're either blowing smoke up my ass or
no, because you know what? Because you guys know that I've been with Loki for a very, very long time, and there would be like years of he would spend like nights staying up all night and watching conspiracy shit constantly all the time, and I would be resistant because I always feel like my job is to be resistant to Loki and whatever he's interested in, take the opposite stance on it.
Right.
And so like I was really, and then once we started getting into this stuff and I'm like the SJW stuff, it fucking all makes sense now. Like the New World Order shit, the Illuminati, it fucking makes sense. The like all of the SJWs who are sitting there complaining about like the 1% and blah blah blah, like it's fucking the Illuminati. Like just it's right there. I don't know about the satanic rituals and shit, but maybe just for the fun of it, they do that stuff.
Check out the Podesta emails. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've been around stuff that's been done like that. It's usually done ironically.
They probably just do it for Alex Jones.
I've seen burned effigies. I've seen animal sacrifices. I've eaten from the flesh of an animal sacrifice. It was good. So I've been around all this stuff. It's generally speaking ironic. People are just fucking around.
But the thing that I don't, and I think we've like talked about this on a couple of dumpster fires that I don't think. Or my theory is that these people who are like the Illuminati people, or what do you call them, the Fabian people or whatever, don't necessarily all have common interest.
No.
And they're fighting among each other.
They don't fight amongst each other that much. Okay, so just to give you an idea with the whole thing, I mean, all right. It's a reference back to Emperor Fabian, the whole thing with Carthage. Emperor Fabian, his thing with Hannibal was that he would not fight Hannibal. He brought the legions near Hannibal, but he would not fight them. Have you ever heard of the word carnage? The root of carnage is a place called Carne, and it's a place where I think like 50,000 or 80,000, some stupid number of Roman soldiers died in one battle. And that was not with bombs, that was with swords.
Kane, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Carne, yeah. And it's the root of the word carnage. And so the Romans were just absolutely getting whacked. And so they elected, it's an interesting concept, they elected an emperor, and it was Fabian, and his idea was he was going to march the legions near Hannibal, and he just was not going to attack him. He was going to basically force Hannibal to remain in a mobilized, ready for battle posture at all times. And it prevented Hannibal from scouting and foraging for food and a variety of other things which caused problems.
Yeah, the standoff method.
Right.
Yeah.
Romans could do that because it was their own home territory. They didn't need to scout as much, and they didn't need logistics because they could simply get supply trains from their own province. But Hannibal had to forage from the land. Everybody had to eat every night. And so in any case, a Fabian strategy is one where you play the long game, right? You basically wait for somebody to make a mistake, and you wait as long as it takes, and you prevent yourself from losing until the moment occurs when you can win if you suddenly strike and you take your moment. So we're all familiar with terms like never let a crisis go to waste, right? That is Fabian. That is Fabian talk with that. That's exactly what Fabian would have recommended. And keep in mind, the people that we're referring to here in merry old England, these were well-educated people from the elite schools in Britain, which put an emphasis on study of classical literature and classical history, right? So these guys, quite a few of them could read Greek and Latin. Quite a few of them were reading these original books in the original Greek and Latin. And it was sort of an affectation of their class to talk about these things because no one but them would know what the hell they were talking about. You'd have to have read these books, or else you can't have the conversation. And so when you form a fraternal order, and it's called the Fabian Society, you can see how that has affectations of class and social and educational sophistication, right? And as well as indeed, right? And so you can see all of that is built into this whole thing. And so that's what this is coming out of, and that's what this utilitarian stuff is. It's the hubris to think that somebody can calculate the human soul, right? You can sit there and plot it out. You can measure it. You can take its temperature, right? And you can elevate the human condition through some sort of mathematical artifice. And we still are suffering from that. I mean, that is by and large what we're running into right now with all this transhumanism stuff as well. They're trying to create God with an AI. Now, I'm not myself a theistic person. I'm agnostic for anyone that cares. But I wouldn't presume that I could create God in a MacBook.
Why the fuck are they trying to create?
Because God is dead, so we must build him. So you've got.
How do you create God?
Talk to the transhumanists; they'll explain it to you. But the thing is that the Fabians and the utilitarians were trying to engineer heaven, right? That's what
Well, that
utopians
I
are trying to
can
do.
understand. An artificial.
You're okay inventing heaven, but inventing
No. I
God is
understand. I understand creating an artificial heaven, which ties into this book a little bit as well.
That's the entire point. Is that
Well,
it does.
yeah, is if there is a place where we could just upload our brains to, that's happiness and bliss.
Keep in mind, these are the same families and people growing out of the end of the First World War, explosion of nihilism.
I think the family of Charles Darwin was also in the Fabian Society.
Probably. This is God is dead.
So is this book supposed to be a critique of the Fabians, of what the Fabian Society would ultimately want?
To a certain extent, I think it's more a criticism of utilitarian philosophy in early 20th century Britain. The reason why it has wider ramifications is because the Fabian Society was subsequently very successful at worming its way into everything. Imagine if they hadn't been. It wouldn't be as apropos. But they were.
These are the same people that Orwell, Eric Blair, would have been ranting about in his tirades about the English upper classes that were left-wing, the excuses they were making for the Stalinists. And this is 32, so this would have even been before he went through hell and brimstone in Spain during the Revolution, and rather the Civil War. So.
Yeah. So one of the things that comes out of this is another term called gradualism. Now, do you know what sounds very similar to gradualism? Progressivism. Because when they say progressive, do they mean modernity? Not necessarily.
No, not at all.
They mean inching towards something.
Well, into their worldview of like egalitarian, equal, everybody is.
It's just progress.
Eliminating. I don't even know what they want, to be honest. I mean, like, I know when I was in a liberal mentality, what I thought we wanted, and it was to like get rid of anything that was you can't be a liberal without using the word systemic or systematic or something like that.
Well, that's fine.
But
I've got no problem with using the term problematic. I can put on the fucking problem glasses. I don't care.
But I guess removing systemic barriers that impede the success of groups as a whole rather than individuals. So like not something that affects individual basis, but if it happens to affect a whole group across the board, regardless of the individual. So like, for example, if across the board group X is affected by alcohol more than group B, we'd look at not individual reasons, but what are the factors. So like that's, and then SJWs came along and started taking the systemic things and then attacking people personally on them. And then the whole conversation got skewed and confusing since then.
Oh, it was skewed in the 1880s, though. That's the argument here, is that it was wrong at its inception. Right? This whole notion of not looking at people as individuals, but rather looking at them as an aggregate. And then trying to manufacture happy at the aggregate level. You can't do that. You can't make your country happy, right? You can make individuals in your country.
That's why Stalin had to kill them.
Goes back even further to the French Revolution with people like God, how am I forgetting all these names today? The Committee of Public Safety. What was his name?
Robespierre.
Yeah, thank you, Robespierre. He was trying to build his little perfect utopia out of the writings of people like Rousseau, who society was dangerous, it was oppressive, people were naturally good, blah blah blah, this utilitarian nonsense. This is going as far
in
back as
Canada, there's
evolution, too.
called the Douglas Coldwell Foundation. It's apparently the Canadian version of the Fabian Society.
Of course.
Well, I mean, maybe she can throw a rock at them. Walk in, maybe walk in and tell them you want to join, Siggy.
What's our variant then? There's bound to be an American one.
Are women allowed?
Generally, I think they are. Yeah. I mean, back in the old days, these things would not have. But subsequently, I should think that they.
Fabian's Women Network. Yeah.
But of course, all women, all men, all people, we're all equal, right? But some are more equal than others.
Amen to that. I mean, no, that's horrible.
Oh my God. Clement Attlee, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm recognizing some of these names all right. These are prime ministers, too.
If you look at the chat, I shared a link where the Fabian Society is talking about how Britain needs to integrate into European life, the European Constitution, and support for, I forgot his name. The Labour guy who, fucking was giving speeches in front of communist flags.
Corbyn.
Yeah, that's the one, Jeremy Corbyn.
I do have to say, we've discussed a couple of other dystopian future books, and I guess we'll go through more as this year next year progresses. But whenever I thought of what could it have been, in the talks of conspiracy theories and new world orders and Fabian societies and Illuminati, I always was thinking about what is their ultimate goal, and what do they want, and what would their version of globalism look like?
Mm-hmm.
And
Societal control.
I guess Brave New World is a pretty good because just with the way that with them being the alphas, and it's funny because they talk about getting rid of Shakespeare and high art and everything that gives history and all of this stuff, but they don't destroy them. They keep them, and the alphas themselves engage in it, which shows even the character
just like Stalin.
Yeah, and where exactly, haven't you? It's really funny. Whenever dictators ban things, but then they always let themselves watch it.
Kim Jong-il's a very good modern example of that.
He loves American movies, but won't let. Yeah, which is interesting. But then they still keep it for themselves, which shows that they think that they're special and elitist and better than everybody, and that they can handle it. And and then they condition the lower classes to literally not be able to handle it.
The Douglas Coldwell Foundation in Canada, their slogan is promoting education and research into social democracy.
Yeah.
Have we heard about social
democracy? They want a brave new world.
Wait a minute.
Guys, I can infiltrate.
Where have we heard social democracy? Who was that? Oh God, there was something I was supposed to be feeling. I was feeling the burn. That's right. Fucking social democracy out of old Bernie, no?
Yeah.
And people just don't understand. He hasn't educated us, you see. He wants to educate you about social democracy.
Yeah, see, I've always, when people are allow me to educate you, it's so you're going to try to indoctrinate me with your philosophy and theory.
Yeah.
Too bad I'm not in a fucking a test tube, right? So you can fucking shake me around and give me some alcohol.
Yep.
Wait, huh? In Fahrenheit 451, how was the means of production controlled? They still had families, but then they would separate children from their parents for most of the time, keeping them.
They had companies. It wasn't. Fahrenheit 451 isn't talking about communism or capitalism, especially.
Right. Yeah, so it revolves around him. He's a firefighter. He has a job. So, I mean, the assumption is everybody in society has things that they do. Right, it's not just a leisurely existence.
But the idea, but it's a similar idea where books give people ideas and they don't keep them conformed, and we want conformity, and so they eliminate books. But then they still have the family dynamic, but they take children, they keep children away from the parents for as many hours of the day as possible, so that they can indoctrinate them.
Right.
Well, remember his wife, right?
Yeah.
So this is interesting. So in this book, they do conditioning, whereas in that book, it's more indoctrination.
Well,
Yep.
every one of them is a product of their. So, like Ray Bradbury was largely addressing what was bothering him, which was the whole censorship and blacklisting of books and dangerous ideas and all of that to protect sort of this prototypical American idyllic existence. And his argument was that all of that was ultimately sitting on top of people having the freedom to do what they want and then just choosing to interact with each other in that way. But if you can't manufacture it, right? You can't strip away people's choices and maintain the integrity of the thing. You can't say, well, you can be this thing or the exact same thing. Vote. Do you want X or X? Right?
Yeah.
You can't take the
But I
choices
mean,
away.
there was similar like themes in both, because even in Fahrenheit 451, and it's interesting how each of them use of technology differs, but they had, what was it, where every room had screens in it, and they were constantly being
That was
bombarded.
1984.
No.
No, that's in
Remember, in Fahrenheit, the wife, like she talked about
Wall
talking to the
screens.
family, which were the people that were on the TV.
Yeah.
You're just constantly watching the wall display.
Yeah.
But it was similar, like constantly distracting people, keeping them bombarded, not letting them think too deeply about things. But it was more, I guess, on indoctrination, where this is more like a eugenics kind of way of
This is the eugenics approach, where that was the banning bad ideas approach.
That was the social behavioral control.
Remember what happened with the fire marshal, right?
Yeah.
The fire marshal, did he burn all the books?
He was supposed to.
No,
but he admitted that he did take books and read them for a
He
while.
the fire marshal had a library.
Yeah.
Didn't he? I thought he had a library.
No, there's another man who had a library, but he told the story that he used to have a collection of books, but he burned them. But never actually confirmed whether or not he did. He just said he did. But he clearly read the books.
That's how the main guy ends up finding the book in the first place.
No, he found it in the house when they got a call.
Oh, right.
Impulsively kept it.
Yeah.
But the point is, like, that is more of the banning ideas, where Brave New World is conditioning that concept out of people.
Yeah. I think Fahrenheit 451 was still a better written
Oh, it was.
book.
Oh, writing style, definitely.
There's
Yeah.
no question. Ray Bradbury has one of the best sellers of books on how to write. You know, no one asks Aldous Huxley how to write.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it's a good book in terms of themes and motifs and discussion, but in terms of like the writing of the book, the plot switching from character to character makes it really confusing. He uses a lot of like jargon. I still think, like, I don't like wordy books very much. So
it seems like a rough draft, like a concept of idea.
Yeah.
Right.
The wordy jargon, though, is actually really important, though, because that is one of the ways, and this is one of the things I poke you for on occasion, Siggy, is we'll be talking about something, and you will use the psychological term for whatever the hell it is.
I know.
Right.
And that's bad.
fine.
I need to stop doing that, though. In school, they're teaching us that we have to stop using like the writing words for other academics. Like, they want us to start writing so that general public can read our research and understand it. And so now there's like de-incentivizing people to write like wordy and confusing with lots of big words.
So,
if you can simplify it.
So in my field, in the tech world, we have all the fucking jargon, right? We've got so much, we've got amazing amounts of it, right? But we can't communicate to anybody that way. So, you know, when I'm explaining things to, human beings and not to fucking robots, on Neptune, right? I have to use analogies and metaphors, and that's part of the reason why you probably heard my speech. I have kind of a propensity to that, and it's simply because I can't communicate complex technical concepts to people by throwing the jargon at them. It's just, I might as well just be like chirping noises at them. It does nothing. I have to throw a metaphor at them. And so that's what I do. And that's just kind of refined in my thinking, metaphorical language. But that is what is also going on in Brave New World as well, right? So that jargon, it's a way of signaling that some things are technical, right? It's a way of signaling that some things have some sort of scientific basis, some sort of mechanism is occurring behind this, and they're demonstrating to you, they're signaling to you, the author is, and as well as the people, that there is something complicated here by dropping the jargon. Usually when you hear the jargon, it's at least suggesting that there's something complicated. Sometimes it's a farce, and it's actually very simple, and they're just using complicated words for something very simple. But
if that was his purpose, he's not that good of a writer, and that doesn't come through. Yeah.
No, he's not. He's not a great writer. But
like I enjoy like vocabulary. Like I think people need to expand their vocabulary because words have different meaning, right? Like to say someone like, I don't know, was enraged versus angry, just angry, could mean different things. So, but I don't know. I'm just meant just as an overall review of the book itself. In terms of writing, I don't think it was that good.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, his literary style and ability is leaves you wanting. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
I multiple times I had to go back to reread the paragraphs. I'm like, I feel like I missed something in this.
Yeah. And like my mind would wander. Like it wouldn't keep me engaged. Like I start thinking about other things that I had to do. Like it wasn't where with other books, like I get, I'm not thinking about anything else except for what's happening in the book.
I have that problem with another author that I read, but I really like what he's writing about. And the entire concept and story that he has, I really like, but his writing style is fucking annoying as fuck.
Who's that?
It leaves me torn. His name is Ian Douglas.
Ian Douglas.
The book series is Star Carrier, and he writes it like that. There's some jumping around, but he likes using big words and stuff like that. And it doesn't like the reading doesn't flow. But I really like what the books are about. He's got the story. The story is good. I'm interested in it. It's just like sometimes I'd read an entire page, but I could have just skipped this page. I wish I'd have known that at the beginning. Because there's nothing of value to be had.
Like this whole book could have been a short story.
Right.
And the dystopian future could have just been described and we could have the same conversation. So like there's no character development, very little. We talked about Bernard's progression. There's no like, I mean the most interesting character I think is the Savage and his ability to cope with the two worlds.
He's the only person who's human.
And he only gets introduced in like what, chapter 8?
But he stands. He's a man who walks in front of everyone naked, and he's the only one who's actually a man.
Right.
Everyone else are these pale, desiccated shadows of human beings.
And I liked, in some ways, I appreciate his calls to Shakespeare, but it kind of feels like fake. When like you're trying to make your work seem more deep by just citing resources instead of actually incorporating it into your story.
Right.
So like he talks about Shakespeare, and I think there are some parallels to like, I guess in the because he keeps bringing up Othello, and then the Freely movie that they watch is like this black man who kidnaps this white woman.
Yeah.
So like there are, but it's so blatant and obvious. Like he's not creative about creating, like integrating the works of Shakespeare into his story. He just literally says Shakespeare.
Okay. Siggy, while we've been talking, I've been reading into this Canadian version of the Fabian Society. And
do you want me to infiltrate?
No, Siggy. I'm reading the website. Everybody has a website. I fucking love the internet. Okay. Are you ready for this? This is great. Okay, so this is one of the guys who's the founder, right? Tommy Douglas. People have a sense of the need for change before it comes. I've never believed that societal change is brought about by rational thinking on the part of people. They take the next step forward because they have to in order to survive. Man likes to tread the beaten path. Only a great social upheaval can force him to to move into some great new uplands of human behavior.
So straight up wanting to socially engineer.
I'm gonna just read this yourself. I'm gonna post it right there. You can look it on the side chat. Do you have the side chat?
Yeah.
Yeah. You see where it says people have a sense of the need. You see that? Read that to yourself. Just in your, like, because maybe I'm reading it poorly. Read that in the privacy of your own mind, and just go like, okay, boosh.
Well, I always thought this kind of too. Like I remember. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
No.
Well, when I was doing my undergrad, I took like an environmentalism course, and they were and the class was called Environmentalism as a Social Movement. And we talked about like other social movements, like women's rights and other things.
Intersectionality, what?
Right. And then the thing was that with environmentalism, I always said, so my theory always was it's never going to work. Like it's never going to turn into anything because most social movements of the past, people have been oppressed or victimized. And that's what has driven them to like revolt and then create the movement where like people don't still feel like victim until people start feeling victimized by the environment, which is like, I don't know, maybe hurricanes every day, all the time or something like that. People are not going to care about the environment.
Yeah, exactly. So what we need is a crisis that we can exploit to change the world. Yeah. Because people are not going to be rational. Their thoughts and their ideas, their will should be subverted because, they're not agreeing with me about things because they're not being rational.
Yeah. Well, if you disagree with me, you must be wrong. I won't rethink my position.
No.
But it's also like putting people into monoliths, right? Like by great social upheaval, like to bring people together is to get rid of their individual differences.
Sure.
And force them on a common goal.
Well, you remember that author that we were talking about that you had to look into? Her overarching mentality over things is society's becoming too individualistic. That's where all the problems seem to stem from in every paper that I saw her write.
Yeah, so I have to present on her tomorrow in class, and like she clearly so she does generational research and she looks at she looks at differences. So she uses survey data mostly from the Monitoring the Future survey, which is like America's census pretty much that they do every few years. And she like looks from the 1970s, but it's so funny. Like she the way that she gets frames her research questions and looks at the variables and then the conclusions that she draws from them. So she looks at, like, for example, in one of her papers, she's looking at the use of swear words in English literature and fiction over time. This is the one I was going to present tomorrow, but I don't think I can do it because it doesn't actually use the generational research stuff. But she looks at the use of fiction. She looks at fictional books or just general books since like the 1970s to like 2010, and through Google Books, and counts literally how many swear words are being used. And she finds that over time now there's more swear words. People are more comfortable with the use of swear words. And she automatically equates that, even in her research question, she equates her hypothesis is framed in a way to say that if there is more use of swear words, it means that people are becoming more individualistic and more like culture. It's because of lack of cultural, like, I don't know, like
societal
community
influence.
Yeah, societal influence about caring what other people think of you so much, and like it's because of loss of community and just society becoming like it's like a bad thing that people are swearing more, and it's because we're individuals and selfish and want to behave badly.
Whereas she ignores the government conditioning that banned the swear words in the first place.
Well, beyond that, it's all about subcultures as well. So in some subcultures, it is a trope of that subculture to use those words. You know, they use it as punctuation, right? You go into the south side of Chicago, right? And you go talking to some people right there. They've got family. They've got, they care about, all kinds of stuff. And but they're not going to talk the way that people in high society speak. They have a different vocabulary. And
Yeah.
most of the words are replaced with fuck. It's just what it is.
It's kind of elitist, actually, because it probably just means that books are now being targeted towards a variety of class of people, as opposed to like the upper class elites before, who were always proper. Like, or it's like equating saying that right now in television and movies, there's more violence because people are more violent, rather than the technology to depict violence realistically has gotten better, and therefore now we see more violence in television.
There's no violence in Shakespeare, right?
Right, yeah.
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 No,
No,
but like we
sex
see,
either. No
but like,
sex either.
right. But even if you look at the progress of television over time, we see more sex and violence, but it's just because we've gotten better at doing those things realistically, not because people weren't having sex and being violent before.
Hey, Mycroft, what about the Greeks? You guys, in your literature, the ancient Greek literature, there's no violence or sex in any of that, right, Oedipus? What?
There's absolutely no violence or sex in the Iliad.
Yeah, but talking about the profanity thing that she was going on about, it's like, yeah, but a lot of these words trace back to like, thousands upon thousands of years ago. Like, but now all of a sudden it's a problem. We're all individualistic. It's like, no, we try to create a more Puritan society where our government was banning these words. You couldn't use them on public broadcast television or radio. I think that doesn't mean society wasn't using them or that we use them more now. They've existed for thousands of years.
Yeah, I know. Like it's and that's funny. Like even like we were talking about statistics before. It's really interesting how you can. Statistics are there, but the interpretation of what you use them for and what conclusions you draw from them, are kind of up in the air a little bit.
Well, so, you could have two complete opposite narratives using the same exact statistic.
Right. And so even in the book, the controller talks about like science, where there's the two kinds of science, because they condition the people to think that science and progress is good. But then he says, but only certain types of science that like is limited progress, and the one that like not, because then change, if you have like a huge invention that could change things, it could reset or disturb the society.
Sure.
Or
we've run into this with some frequency with people that will attack religion X or Y on the basis that it doesn't like, I don't know, evolution or the world being round or whatever, right? And they will hold themselves up as, being the head of all that is rational and scientific and whatever. And then someone will cite some inconvenient little element of science that happens to contradict their philosophy. And all of a sudden, well, things got controversial, right? And so they're the same people. We're all the same people, right? So Bill Nye wants to go and yell at some cardinal or whatever, right? Well, listen, you both got dicks. You both eat cheeseburgers and shit in the toilet, buddy. Okay, your whole notion of the universe is coming in through these two little gelatinous orbs in the front of your fucking face. You're communicating to me by squeezing some like fleshy little diaphragm and vibrating something in your throat. And I mean, who the hell do you think you are? Right? You're the same guy, and well, your brain doesn't work any different than the other guy does. Your whole notion of how you're associating with the universe, it's gonna ultimately work out to be something similar. I'm not saying we all worship the same God or whatever, but you're gonna follow some sort of non-empirical way of structuring your universe. And if you're told that it has to be empirical, you'll fucking kill yourself.
And the problem is with human, like it's one thing to when you're looking at science, when you're looking on the cellular level.
It sounds delicious.
Chocolate. I'm eating chocolate. My Aero bar. But when you're talking about human behavior, even the human body is constantly changing over time and evolving. So there are no but specifically with human behavior, anyone who wants to say, oh, like implicit bias is factually proven, it's a fact. Like you can't say that about any kind of human behavior or characteristic because it changes and grows over time. It might be a fact that at one point in time, but it doesn't mean it's not going to change.
Yep. Yeah. Well, so I mean, So I mean, I guess what I always try and do whenever I read something is I say, like, what can I take from this? And one thing that I took from it was I saw myself as Huxley to a certain extent. Like, rather than trying to understand what was going on with Bernard, I was trying to understand what was going on with Huxley himself. And I found that to be very, I could empathize with the guy. Because I'm hearing, and have been hearing for many years, similar bullshit at the parties I've been going to for most of my life.
Which is what? People who are pseudo-intellectuals pretending like they know what's best for the majority of human population?
Yes.
Well, yeah. So,
Because
like,
I'm surrounded.
yeah. So yeah. There's eco-fascists that I've. Okay. Do your thing.
Oh, I was coughing.
Okay.
I stopped to let you go, but then I had to cough.
Okay. Yeah. So there's the eco-fascists, right, who want to like wipe out 99% of the population of the planet. They, of course, will be the portion that will remain naturally. Because the Earth only has.
Sorry, just before you continue, how are we different than them?
I'm not suggesting I murder anybody. What are you talking about?
Well, they're not suggesting to murder anybody either.
They are.
They're gonna do forced sterilizations and stuff.
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
70% of the population's women are sterilized.
Wait, and among your pseudo-intellectual parties, they actively talk about sterilizing people?
Well, yeah, no. Well, what they say is there are too many people on planet Earth, right? So, okay, once we know there are too many people, now you've got to create some sort of a system that will cause there to not be too many people. Well, how are you going to arrive at that?
Yeah.
Well, first you have to look at the people who are having too many kids, and it's usually the poor people, and the poor people are the victims according to SJW mentality. So,
no.
Sterilize them.
Siggy, you keep forgetting my mantra. Okay, what do I do when I want to hurt somebody? Right, I help them.
You let them self-destruct.
No, I help them.
Yeah, think of Planned Parenthood's mantra.
Okay.
Right?
You've heard me explain how this works, right? So there's like any sort of situation where somebody is being hostile with me. My go-to, this is how I've been conditioned. My go-to way of dealing with it is I help them. But see, when I'm done helping with them, they're done. They are fucked. That is what I do, and they will consent to all of it. They will thank me while I annihilate them.
But to take it back, Siggy, to talk specifically about the book, Helmholtz actually is an intellectual in a sea of pseudo-intellectuals, right? And for his efforts, because he's like, I have this whole power in my brain, but I don't know how it works. I want to use it, and he tries a little test with that poem, right? And then he ends up getting exiled. But when he's in exile, he's like, now I'm free to pursue my inspirational writing, right?
Which is interesting that the island, that the society allows for them to go somewhere and just do whatever it is
they want them out of society so they don't infect the other people.
Yeah, but at the same time, they don't murder them either. They just like send them off somewhere.
The society has ridiculous resources. It doesn't matter. It's a nominal cost.
Which is why I'm a little bit okay with that society, because then if it's not for you, you can just leave and be part of the cool people.
What do you mean if they were brain damaged at birth?
Yeah. If you're an epsilon, there's nothing for you.
Let me tell you, Siggy. Let me tell you. If you were born into that society, just like me and just like Trigger, you're going to be high five epsilons. Hey.
Well, I mean, in defense of the epsilons, it's like the difference between actual poverty and relative poverty. So actual people who are
literally brain damaged. On purpose.
Right, but so are people who have Down syndrome and they're happy as fuck.
They're not fucking brain damaged on purpose, Siggy. The big
Siggy, come here. I got an ice pick for your left temple. Okay, you'll love it.
Purpose.
You'll love it.
Intentionally versus.
There's a correlation between intelligence and depression. I'm just saying.
And run loads of current through there until you're just laughing.
So, you guys heard it here. Siggy is pro Brave New World Society.
Yeah, pro brain damage.
No. Look. The difference between actual poverty and relative poverty is really interesting because people with relative poverty, you can be in less poverty, but because you're comparing yourself to rich people, you feel worse than someone who is in actual more poverty, but they don't have that comparison.
So, like, imagine if every human being had their own personal planet, full of like a million stupid robots that would make them whatever, right? So you have the total industrial capacity of a planet that would just give you whatever you wanted. So every individual has that. But there's some motherfucker out there who has a whole galaxy. Fuck.
Yeah. So
it never ends.
Thinking, my view of their society is just like the like John's statement of like the tiers are important, you know, the bad is important, controlling yourself, like all of that stuff is important. Like happiness means nothing if there is no sadness. If bad things don't happen in your life, you don't appreciate the happiness or the people around you who actually care for you and are good, decent people.
Well, also, am I actually happy if you made me happy, if you forced me to be happy,
exactly,
if you conditioned me to be? It's not even my happiness, right? What I am is I'm just an empty vessel that you poured a pre-programmed feeling into. And
you basically conditioned me to think this is happiness.
Yeah, and that's the whole Philip K. Dick thing. This is one of the things that we were talking about for Future Book Club. Anyone who gives a shit.
Yeah.
We were talking about some Philip K. Dick books because what Philip K. Dick was always talking about is what is the human soul, right? And so he was always doing some sort of a science fiction thing where, like I say, it's Total Recall, where you would remember a childhood you never had. You would remember a trip, a wonderful vacation you went on. No, you were sitting in that chair for half an hour drooling on yourself. You got up and remembered the vacation.
They can plant memories inside you.
Well, okay, but see, then that's the same thing, isn't it? You see? It's an element of conditioning. You feel this because I've made you feel it.
Well, all of this stuff.
You'd have to think that you might like flowers and nature, and that would be the thing that would give you true happiness. There are people out there who, you know, their whole life pursuit is to go, you know, swim with dolphins and stupid shit like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They condition that out of you. They electrocute you to think that's bad.
Yeah.
Right? So the thing that you would actually love that would give you lifetime happiness, they've conditioned out of you because they don't like it.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. The paradox of the story is that there is no true happiness in there. It's like manufactured or artificial.
So why are you advocating for it? Siggy?
It's all whatever. But the point is that it's all bullshit. That's really what it is. The whole thing is it's an entire it's a world built on the premise of utilitarianism, and what you can see is it's a sham. It's all bullshit. You haven't generated actual happiness. What you've done is you've stripped out everything that makes it worth being alive. And none of these people are living lives that are worth living, right? Do you want to be an epsilon, a beta, a delta, even an alpha? Even the alphas have shitty lives. They're happy.
Did we say this came out in the 1930s?
It did.
So this was prior. No, because I was wondering, like, when in the context of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that one, he came out with that in 43.
Yeah, but Maslow and all these guys, it's all coming out of the same sort of intellectual soup, right?
Well, I'm just wondering if Maslow was influenced by this kind of work, because
of course he was.
The purpose of because he starts separating different types of needs for human existence, and I guess this is like an interesting starting point of like how they try to fill the basic needs of sex, and even like. So they even realize that because he talks about what about need for pain and suffering and getting over it, and they even talk about how they have violence stimulator thingies where they can create the physiological responses to like anger and stuff because your body actually needs that.
Yeah.
So it's really funny how like the natural bodily evolved human conditions, even in the 600 future, they still like, what do? Go through fake pregnancies for the women to like help them get set right. Like they have hysteria and they need to be.
Well, you just have the doctor come in with the gloves on and stimulate her vagina until she calms down. They used to do that.
Yeah, isn't that how vibrators were?
No, the woman would be hysterical, and they'd lay her down, and the doctor would just take his hand, jam it right in her vagina until she calmed down.
How did that calm her down?
I mean, Siggy, would you not get calm pretty quick? Look, let me put it this way. If you don't calm down, the hand's not coming out.
Well, next time I'm hysterical, I'll let Loki know to try that, and we'll see how it works.
It might work beautifully. You might go like, oh, shit, I just need a dick.
Right.
No, there's this woman I've had to work with some frequency, and she's got a very bad reputation for being very difficult to work with. She freaks out at everything. And I went over there and I had the same experience everybody else did. But I realized what was going on is she was just hungry. She was having like a blood sugar issue. And so like the next time I went in there, I brought her a sandwich. I'm the only one who has a good relationship with this chick. And it's because every single time I go to work with her, sandwich.
Very
no
nice.
problems. No problems. She just has a blood sugar issue.
So are we done? Did we cover?
So the next book, I think we're agreed, right? Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep
Sure,
by
we'll do that.
Philip K. Dick.
Sure.
Published in 1968 and is the basis for the movie Blade Runner.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Blade Runner has very little to do with this book.
Yeah.
Well,
he kind of took the environment, right?
Yeah, it's like loosely massive air quote based on.
I did have one more question because this is the dilemma that I'm having. The last weekend of December is New Year's.
Christmas. I was just gonna say that.
It's New Year's, and the weekend before that is Christmas. Thoughts?
No.
No?
No.
Well,
I mean, look,
2 p.m. New Year's Eve?
Yeah.
No?
I'm just saying I'm not going to be reliable. I'm going to be chatting with people who are going to be. I'm going to be eco-fascists are going to be telling me things on New Year's.
Of course.
That's what we're gonna sacrifice a goat, and we're gonna dance around the fire.
It's like the 3rd. It's like the Sunday after New Year's.
You want to do this Sunday after New Year's?
Like on January 3rd.
Well, that would be
Sunday.
wait,
sorry, never mind. I'm looking at December.
We can, and then do a short book for January, like Animal Farm. That sound good?
You mean do a book like on December?
Well, do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep on the 7th, then do Animal Farm for the last weekend of.
Well, let's do one. Let's plan out one book at a time. Let's plan out one book at a time. Because we may.
Well, no, if we're gonna do January 7th for this one, so to skip the holiday season.
Yeah.
That would give us 2 weeks before the end of the next month, or we could just skip January entirely.
No, let's just skip December entirely and do January 7th, and then sometime mid-December, if you want, we could do Animal Farm.
Are you high?
She just ate a bunch of chocolate.
Okay. Lace chocolate?
Wait, sorry. So I'm confused.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
So the next book club is on January 7th?
That's what I'm asking you guys. If that works for you.
Yes.
Look, all I am saying is that if there's a bunch of holidays and stuff, I am unreliable.
No, the 7th. So after all the holidays.
Yeah, that's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. There you have it.